Welcome everybody. Happy Friday from us at Power to Fly. In case you are maybe new to these events or if you just haven't joined us in a while, my name is Meg. It's nice to meet all of you. I am a virtual host and moderator with Power to Fly, and I'm very excited to be your host for today's event. Before I start and introduce you to our amazing, I do just want to go over a couple real quick housekeeping items for y'all, so that way if you're new to Bevy, our new platform, you'll know how today's event is going to go. So in addition to the information you're going to see on the screen right there, I just want to call out that today's event, like all of our virtual events, is all about our community, our attendees. We want to make sure that the time you spend with Power to Fly is well worth it. So if you have any questions that you would like to add or comments, please feel free to add comments and general stuff into the general chat tab. If you have specific questions you'd like to ask our guest speakers today, you can put those into the Q&A bucket. And once the questions are in there, your fellow attendees can check out that Q&A bucket and upvote or thumbs up any questions that you would particularly like to hear about. That kind of gives me an idea of what areas y'all would prefer to focus on or that really interest you for today's session. Unfortunately, unlike Zoom, you won't be able to come off mute or share your screen, or sorry, come off mute or turn your cameras on, so apologies for that. But this session is being recorded. So if you want, everybody that registered for today's session, whether you stay for 5 minutes, the full 60, or you didn't make it at all and you're watching this in the future, hi. Everybody that registered will get an email in a few business days, it's usually like 1 to 2 business days, that has a link where you can rewatch this recording. So don't worry about taking notes, or if you miss what somebody says, you will be able to review it at a later point. So let's get started, and I'd love to introduce you to our 2 guests from Clyde. So first up, we have Pamela Schneider, who's the VP of Warranty. Pam recently joined Clyde as its new Vice President of Warranty, where she will drive the scaling of Clyde's warranty business. In recent years, Pam served in a series of executive positions for the Warranty Group, which is one of the world's leading providers of warranty solutions and related insurance products, before it was acquired by Assurant. She started her career as a diplomat in Latin America, representing U.S. economic and political interests in the region. Pam earned her MBA from the Wharton School, her BA from the University of Michigan, the lovely Midwesterner. She is fully bilingual in English and Spanish and strongly proficient in Portuguese, which I have heard is a very difficult language to learn. Pam is mom to a teenage son, 2 feisty cats, and in her rare free time, she runs marathons and loves to travel. So welcome, Pam.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So happy to have you. Joining Pam, we have Ashley Hildreth. Ashley is a seasoned partnerships professional with Clyde and also the VP of Business Development and Partnerships. She has a deep love for bringing people and technology together. She is leading their charge to build a people-first partner program that empowers digital agencies, technology companies, and strategic partners with the support and education to provide best-in-class solutions for their customers. So welcome, Ashley.
Thanks, Meg.
So as we get going here, I do just want to call out real quick, both of our lovely guests are from Clyde. There's a link here in the chat where you can check out Clyde's page on Power to Fly. Now it's going to look like hold on, let me put it here in the chat. There y'all go. It's going to look like the screen that you see here. The only thing that's different is there'll be a follow button, big pink follow button at the upper right-hand side of the screen. If you follow the link to this page, you can get more information about Clyde as a company. You can also check out their current open roles. Clicking that follow button puts you on their follow network. So it tells Clyde that you're interested in working with them. And it's especially a good thing to do if there aren't any currently open roles posted that would suit you. But it also keeps you updated so that whenever Clyde posts new roles, you know. So that way you can make sure that you don't let an opportunity to work for this great company pass you by. So like I said, I shared that link with you, so please feel free to check that out. And I'm super excited to keep moving to our principal themes for today's conversation. So y'all submitted questions, and we also told you in advance kind of what you could expect to get from today's conversation. So the 3 things that we're going to hopefully cover, or you'll hopefully be able to take away from today's session, are up on your screen right now. As we go into the main questions, we won't be sharing the screen. I'll just, it'll just be me in conversation with our amazing Clyde team members. So if you have, like I said, if you have any technical problems, please feel free to message me in my DMs. You can also put Q&A or additional questions into the Q&A bucket, as well as chat with your fellow attendees and myself in the general tab. So let's get started here with our questions list. And I want to make sure that we do cover from the start. Could either of you give us a real quick intro to what Clyde is and what y'all do as a company? I know that when I was in the sourcing team, y'all were one of my accounts that I had to source for, and I thought that the business model and the idea was really interesting. I had never heard about it before. So could you give our audience a brief explainer?
Ashley, do you want? Sure. Clyde it's a product-focused, technology-first, next generation extended warranty company. So it really bundles technology and extended warranties to transform what has historically been a very large $60 billion industry that's really traditional and steeped in kind of old ways of doing things. So the example I give people a lot of times is if you have an iPhone, Apple Care at its core is an extended warranty. It's a type of product that we sell through our customer-focused technology platform.
Okay, so it basically functions as that extended warranty, like if the company that you bought have their own extended warranty program in place?
Yeah, I mean, typically, yes. Or it can be that we are that provider for whoever the company is that you're buying an extended warranty from. It could actually be Clyde behind the scenes, but more likely than not, you're going to see Clyde if it's a Clyde offering.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for explaining that to us. So to get us started with the questions that y'all had pre-submitted for today that came from our community members, the first question I have is, how can I target my search for jobs when I have an unconventional career path? So either one of you, please feel free to jump in on this and get us started with answers.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I think one of the things that I really liked about this question is I think it's easy for us to have some preconceived notions of what our career should look like based on the past. And I think there's some predefined paths that don't always need to be like where we need to actually take our careers. And so I am a great example of somebody who has a pretty non-traditional background. Like I have a fine arts degree, and here I am at a insurtech company handling partnerships and business development. So one of the things that I would just say to that is to not get too stuck up on the past and start building a story that you can frame in a way that would paint your past experiences as a fresh perspective that you can bring to the table to a new opportunity. So, I think that story building element is really critical towards a job search and being able to tell people about your path and how those relevant experiences could be brought to help the business with their core objectives, and you can apply those to your new role.
Excellent. Pam, did you have anything you'd like to add to that before we move on?
No, I think Ashley, she did a great job, and I'll leave it with Ashley.
You're a woman after my own heart. I have a mint condition art history degree that clearly is, something that really informs my job now. Yeah, it was one of those things that made sense when I was intent on being an attorney, but not really something I get to use anymore. So yeah.
It makes you a unique problem solver, Meg.
You know what? And that's one of the things, I've had a lot of jobs in a lot of very disparate industries. And if nothing else, it helps you bring a very interesting and unique viewpoint to the table. I was a paralegal before this, and I was paralegal for several years in a previous life. And as you know, I now, as part of Power Fly, get to flex my paralegal skills as part of our legal team. So it's kind of wild, even though I was hired to, you know, be a talent sourcer for job listings. So you never know what's going to be useful in your next role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So to get us to our next question here, this person had written in saying, how did experiences in industries other than your current industry prepare you for that success?
Well, I'll take this one. And we were actually just talking about this. You talked about how your experience as a paralegal has, you know, it doesn't seem like it would translate into what you're doing currently, but there are, I'm sure, aspects of it that are completely transferable, if not readily apparent on the surface. And in my case, I would say not only did experiences in other industries, but also in other several functional roles help to give me a different perspective and a different lens to view things through. So it's enabled me to break down the silos and build bridges within an organization to put myself in, or at least try to put myself in the shoes of whoever I'm collaborating with or working with to solve typically a complex problem. So so I would say that for me has been one of the things that I've taken away from other experiences. And then as in my first career, I was a US diplomat living in Latin America, and being, you know, the quote unquote foreigner and working in a completely different culture, actually more than one, several different cultures, also teaches you how to really see things through a different lens, and being able to influence people. In my particular job, my job was to promote U.S. foreign policy and U.S. interest, and learning how to form compelling arguments and influence people that had no requirement to talk to me, essentially. Really built a skill set that I use probably every day in my current role.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of those things where it seems like, well, you know, nothing in my last role has anything to do with my current one, but it's also definitely an opportunity to focus on the soft skills, right? Like you might not have any hard technical skills or certifications or anything that really translate from industry to industry, but people, I feel like calling them soft skills really does them a great disservice. Like, these are hugely important things to know how to do. Things like teamwork, things like communication methods. You know, I mean, people that come from the service industry get a bad rap, but as somebody who spent 8 years as a bartender, those people skills are absolutely invaluable. You have, I mean, working with difficult people, even if you're not in a customer-facing industry or customer-facing role currently, like working with difficult people, even, you know, in the worst of situations, the worst of, you know, my job depends on making this person like me. Like, those are skills you need. Those are skills you can absolutely leverage. Ashley, have you ever had to do this, you know, as in either in your current role or past roles?
I mean, I also held front of house positions too. So I think like the patience building element of that, and being able to deal with difficult people in challenging situations, definitely was a learning experience for me. I also just try and take from like social experiences as well, and life experiences, and use that as like kind of character building opportunities. So yeah, I would agree.
Sure. Okay. I'm following our talk in the chat. Kristen also agrees about the paralegal skills. And LaRonda is saying, amen. After working in restaurants for years, every other job I've had is easy comparatively. And she's not wrong. There's definitely something to be cherished about, you know, not having to like sit there and wait while someone on an amazing date just stays forever. So yeah, it's definitely an upgrade. All right, so to go for our next question, this person had asked, can you find your niche by experimentation, or should you have a clear idea and strategy? And could either of you talk about how you found yours?
I can chime in. So it's funny to look back at like my younger former self, like fresh out of college. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City. I went for graphic design, and like my vision for what I was going to be when I grew up was I was going to work at an advertising agency as an art director or a creative director, leading a team of designers. And that clearly didn't pan out. But I'm like so glad. I'm so glad that it didn't. And I'm really grateful to be where I am today. And like looking back, I think my whole life has been a little bit of like fly by the seat of my pants, but also have like my eye on the ball for like a long-term goal of, I wanted to be a female executive somewhere, whether that was in arts or now tech. And so after graduating with that shiny graphic design degree, I decided to go ahead and go into business with someone that was in the banking industry and founded my own business. So there's a screen printing shop and artist workspace that was in Brooklyn, and it's still there today. But I learned like quite a bit about like entrepreneurship, running a business, operations, dealing with HR. And then like life threw me a little bit of a curveball, and I wound up, having to pivot and find my way into a new role in an entirely new industry because I had to relocate. And for that, I would say that like clearly I did not have a clear idea or strategy for how I wanted to go about my career. But like in the long term, if I were to go back and ask 20-something-year-old Ashley, like, how do you feel about where things wound up? I feel pretty good. I'm very pumped to be where I am today. And I feel like it does check a lot of the boxes in many ways for what I was hoping to do long term. So be open to like just kind of rolling with the punches and figuring out where life is going to take you, but then like still have like those kind of that checklist of some of the things that are going to make you happy and feel rewarded in your career. That'd be my take on that.
I love that idea of having the checklist, because I feel like when people ask these questions, I feel like a lot of it comes from a place of, I don't know what I'm doing. Shouldn't I know what I'm doing by now? And if that's not really the background of the person asking the question, then it usually comes from somebody who's like, well, I had a plan and it's not working, or I had a plan and I can't follow the plan anymore. And I get it, because like if you are, no matter how young you are, how new into the work, if you have a plan, even if it's not, it's very pie in the sky and you have no idea like if it's going to be like successful or not, it feels reassuring, right? Because it feels like, well, at least I have a map. At least I can follow a map. That'll be great. But you're creating a map for a land that you've never visited, that no one else can tell you if that map is right, or even if the X or whatever at the end of the finish line is where you want to be, if it's even a thing, if it, whatever. And so I think I really love what you said about having that checklist, because if you not necessarily forget the map, but if you know, like, you want to be in a, like, so for me, I didn't know until I got this job, I really enjoy being in a company with a mission that I can really relate to. I like being in a company focused on equality and trying to, elevate women and get people better, that need to be represented into various industries where they are not represented. But I didn't know that until I got this job. Now that kind of gives me, I need a company with a nice mission. I need a company I can believe in, not just, oh, that sounds like a cool company to work for, or they're paying the bills. So I think, Pam, have you had similar guideposts when you were, looking at various roles?
Yeah, I actually have a fairly similar, albeit different story to Ashley's, in that I wanted to be a U.S. diplomat. I wanted to be Secretary of State, and I went and did that. And I think it is important to have a plan, but like Ashley said, you have to be willing to pivot and be open to new experiences and ideas, because what I thought was important to me in my 20s and what is important to me, when I'm in my 30s or 40s are very different. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything in the world. I mean, it really, my time as U.S. diplomat has really shaped who I am as a person. But at the same time, I think it's important to have an outline, but like you said, I love that analogy that you have a map to a land that you've never visited, and you know, I just think great example with the way technology is changing and our world around us is changing. I was talking to a friend about how in these COVID times, there's a whole new role called a vaccine finder. I mean, who I mean, that job didn't exist even a year ago. And now there's a whole new job. You could be a vaccine finder. And so and there are a myriad of examples like that. You know, I think of big data analytics, that whole field has just completely exploded. It didn't exist when I was in college. So I think it's hard to, it's hard to plan out I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who have been very, very focused and methodical and had their checklist and they followed and ticked every box. Particularly in the more traditional professions, I'm thinking, you know, accountant or attorney, but even within there, there's just so much evolution. So I would say don't be wedded to it. Have a plan, but be open and willing to flex and pivot when you realize the plan's no longer working or not working as you had anticipated.
Yeah, I think that's probably where a lot of people have issues, right? Like it's kind of hard to tell whether you're weathering a storm or this is you're already way off the path. JS is commenting in the chat saying, unfortunately, I have experienced a great deal of workplace trauma, even though I've only done helping jobs. I've always done jobs that I love and that had a mission, but I wasn't treated well. I wasn't treated well at them except one. I'm fine emotionally, but it makes me not want to have anything to do with my past work history. So if you're looking to start over, they want to know what is the best way to start over resume wise. Would anyone like to address this, or I think we might have a question further down that talks about this a little bit. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have a related question, but I mean, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Like focusing on your soft skills that can translate between the two, the two industries.
Yeah, I think, Jay, if you're able to kind of figure out like where you want to go, and if you're making a career change, you will be asked about your past job experiences in interviews. So I don't know that you can entirely get away from that, but I think if you can frame it and package it in a way that makes it relatable to a new career change or to that role specifically, like you don't have to get too involved in the weeds around like what occurred. And I'm sorry to hear that you had a great deal of workplace trauma that you have to carry with you, but hopefully that in your new path and a new role, you'll have a much more positive experience. So I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, and I would just add to what Ashley said is to also pull out what you learned from it. And again, you don't have to go into details, kind of high level, these are the learnings. For example, culture and the values of a company are really important to me. And so when you are looking for your next opportunity, you can talk about how what you learned is that values, a company's values or an organization's values are really important to you, and why.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm on our, I'm going to throw a couple links in the chat in a moment. It's places, I'm giving you a couple links to where you can check out our past sessions specifically on like resume building or shifting your career focus. So I'm going to drop those in the chat, and I definitely recommend any of the chats that feature Kelly or Jill. They're the women that work with us from the Aurora Collective. They're absolutely amazing. So I'll drop those links in the chat here in just a moment. LaRonda is also chiming in saying maybe focusing on and reaching out to past allies, even at horrible jobs, might be a good place to start. Some of the worst jobs she's had have bonded some friends, have really bonded with friends because of that shared experience. I can tell you this is a fact for sure, because one of the worst waitressing jobs I ever had gave me my best friend of 10 years. And this is somebody that I never would have met otherwise. And she's been invaluable both in like a personal capacity, but also as, you know, as kind of, she's one of my, I heard a person talk about it as your personal board of directors. Like she's one of those people that I call where I'm like, I'm not really sure if I'm headed in the right direction. What does this sound like? And she'll kind of not necessarily tell me what to do. She just sort of like bounces ideas of like, well, you said you really like this, so what about blah, blah, blah. So definitely make sure you leverage those past allies that you have had at previous roles or previous industries.
And also just to expand on this a little bit too, when you're interviewing with a company, they're not only interviewing you, you're interviewing them. So what are some of the questions that you can ask to make sure that, you know, they really do hold their employees like health, wellness, safety at the core, at their core values, and make sure that like they're in line with what you're looking for in your next role. And that was one of the things, like Clyde gave me all the warm and fuzzies when I was going through the interview process. And honestly, like one of the core reasons that I was so excited beyond just the fact that like we had really awesome product, I thought we were really disrupting an industry, was also just like their approach to people. And like just the engagement that I had with everyone that I spoke with at Clyde throughout my interview experience was like one of the top reasons why I was so excited to join this company. So take that opportunity in your experiences in the future to ask some tough questions.
Right, it's kind of knowing where you should, you know, where you should exercise like your judgment and listening to the answers, right? Like making sure that you're asking the questions that should be asked, but really listen to what you're saying or what you're hearing from them, because you know you're interviewing this potential company just as much as they're interviewing you. Okay, so moving on to our questions. So another person had asked, when working in a niche industry, how can you break the ceiling? This person says, I've been working in the same industry, affiliate marketing and performance-based, for over 5 years, and I can't find new or different opportunities. How can I identify what could be the next step within that expertise?
I can take this one. I would say, first of all, focus on identifying what your core strengths and transferable skills are. And these can be, you know, we've touched on these can be hard technical skills, and they can also be soft skills. And then look for what I would call adjacent industries. So they can be, for example, a supplier to the industry, and supplier meaning, you know, do you use software? Do you use technology? Because a lot of times those companies hire people who have expertise in particular industry into which they sell, as an example. Or it could be, I mean, affiliate marketing, I'm not, you know, super familiar with, but, you know, is there, you know, example, another marketing type, like think of marketing on a broader basis, and can you transfer some of your skills into that, the adjacent area. So, and then there could be, the other thing to look at is what are the characteristics of the industry in which you're in? Is it regulated? Is it unregulated? Is it a service industry? Is it a product industry? Are they hard goods or soft goods? And look at those characteristics, and then find industries that have similar characteristics. So, you know, a lot of my background is in insurance and financial services, and insurance is a highly regulated industry. So is financial services, highly regulated industry. Those two industries, from my perspective, are adjacent to each other. So that's another way to look at breaking out of a niche industry, and particularly if you feel you're hitting your ceiling.
Thank you. I love that. It's one of those questions that seems really like hard to parse out, but thank you so much for, you know, kind of breaking it down into the more understandable sections. Okay, so this next person had wanted to know, and actually just to highlight for y'all, we only have 30 minutes left in today's session. So if you do have questions that you would like to know, please, you know, feel free to get them in. I also really appreciate the activity of everybody in the chat, you know, chiming in with comments and stuff. That's really great. It's so awesome. So thank you all for that. All right, so for this next person, they said, working in a niche industry, I sometimes feel scared that the opportunities will be few. How can I make my profile broader while maintaining my current job? So when I read this question, I kind of saw it as coming from a perspective of like trying to maybe broaden your certifications or your experiences, but I'm interested to see what you ladies thought of it.
Yeah, no, I'll take this one as well. And I mean that I kind of had a similar interpretation of this question as you did, Megan. And so I would say, first of all, kind of in many ways, these are kind of your classic answers. Volunteer for special projects, look for stretch assignments. I would also say, particularly nowadays with the COVID, there's a lot of volunteer opportunities available, that more so than ever, because you can do a lot remotely and virtually. So look for volunteer opportunities that are outside your core area, that again are maybe one step removed, that is a bit of a stretch, that you can build some new skills and broaden out your portfolio, or take a course. If you're like a marketing guru and you're not as strong in finance, and you want to have a better understanding of financial statements or finance in general, there are tons of online courses out there these days, and a lot of them are free or very low cost. So you can also take a course and broaden your exposure that way.
Yeah, a lot of companies are doing like a ton of webinars and stuff right now. So like even just to expose you to like new terminology, new concepts, finding who some of the category leaders are in a field that you're interested in exploring, and carving out 45 minutes of your day to listen in on a webinar just to like pick up on some new tips and tricks in that different area.
Yeah, absolutely. I do see some people commenting in the chat, asking more questions about like kind of resume building and that kind of thing. I'm just going to kind of redirect y'all to the links that I shared up above. Check out some of those past events, and as well as you can also refer to this recording once it goes live, because we've had these ladies have shared a couple of really great tips on that. So definitely check those out. All right, so this person had this question really interesting a lot of us that have been in this position. This person wanted to know, how do you create a business case for a new role? Now, I interpreted this as like something you would do from inside a specific organization. Like, I think this new job should be created. But if the person that asked this was hoping to get, kind of like company to company, like I'm applying at this other company, I think they could use a different position. Please sing out if that's what you were intending. But I think it was meant to be, I'm working at company A, how can it come to create a new role so that I can apply?
Yeah, and I think the other perspective that you could also read into this as well is if you are a hiring manager and you're looking to build out a business case to add additional headcount to your team. So what I would say is that there is a very real formula to building out a business case. So addressing whatever that problem or business need looks like. For instance, we have so many support tickets, our team can't keep up with it, or we want to expand or increase our sales numbers, and maybe we need to hire more people. So addressing the problem or the challenge, and then listing out all of the different options for approaching that challenge, whether that could be like taking a technology route or a people route, which obviously is what we're aiming for today. And then framing out what the ideal or recommended solution would be, i.e. this role, and putting together like objectives and KPIs on how you would measure the return of the investment into hiring or adding that position to the team, so that you can then build a real case for, you put X amount of dollars into this individual for salary, benefits, training, et cetera. And in return, we're going to yield the X, Y, and Z results. So I built more business cases than I really care to admit. So I hope that some of that is helpful. But like as a hiring manager, as a business, we're trying to look at like what is going to be the return on the investment. So really focusing on what that's going to look like and framing that in a way that makes that irresistible to the business. I think that, so as someone who, when I first joined my last company, Trustpilot, I joined as part of the sales team. So as an account executive, I was the low man on the totem pole. I hustled my ass off and managed to get my way into President's Club, which put me in a position where like I felt like I got to the top, right? And so like at that point, I felt like I needed to explore either a new opportunity at a new company or a new opportunity within that company. And so for me, I was really interested in long-term, sorry to make this about me, but I was interested in a long-term career at that company. And so with that, I had the opportunity to start working with our enterprise accounts team to help build out our partnership program. And so that was very much like a proof of concept for the business. And so making sure that if that question is geared towards you looking to build a business case for a role that you want, making sure that if you are successful and the business does approve that role, being able to communicate to the leadership team around the successes that you're having and reminding them like, we're kicking ass with this, and maybe you want to grow your team as part of a new team at the company as well. So lean in on those ROI points, make sure everybody feels good about the investment.
And thank you so much for sharing that. Too much of you. I mean, like part of why we asked y'all to come today is so that you could, share your personal experience with us. I feel like it's usually very impactful for me, at least, to hear how other people have done it. Even if it's not something that would work for me necessarily, it can kind of help give me ideas of like things that I could try. So thank you for that, Ashley.
Sure.
Pam, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think I can top Ashley.
All right. Okay, so this person had asked, how do you use your niche experience as a fuel for a more traditional industry? What's the best way to present it when you're in an interview?
So I would say this one is, it's similar to what we talked about before and what Ashley just touched on is when you're targeting a new industry or a new company, and I would say really, if you're trying to make a move from one industry to another, you really got to focus on particular companies, because within an industry, each company will have its own, its own set of challenges and opportunities. And you want to look at what are those challenges, what problems are they trying to solve, and how can you help them solve those problems? And problems can be, I'm talking about problems with a capital P. It can be they are growing super fast and they can't keep up with the growth, or they want to grow fast, or they are in a traditional industry and they're in a turnaround situation where they have declining margins and they're losing market share. And so you want to look at what are, what's the landscape? What are they facing? And how do the skills that you have going to help them to solve those problems or the challenges that they're facing? And this is an example of where I think when you're trying to change industries, networking is always important, but it's even more important when you're trying to change industries, because you're more likely to get at least a hearing if you go through a network connection than you are if you submit your resume online. More likely than not, it's not going to make it through the ATS. It's going to end up, in some black digital hole. So it's really important. Put together a target list of companies. Really do your homework. Research what challenges they're facing and how you can help them solve those challenges, and then look for any networking connection you have to those companies. And then I would add to that, this is a time to really leverage the cover letter and use it to make your pitch, really to state your case of how, based on what your understanding of what they're facing, you can really come in and create value for them.
I absolutely love that. I feel like the networking example or the networking advice is something that we hear a lot, not just because we provide networking events, but because it is, a very useful tool. I'm sharing a link in the chat to past events that we've hosted about networking and how to really utilize it properly. And I feel like one of the most important, think outside the box when you're looking at networking. Google if there's any professional organizations near you, or even remotely people that you can kind of get in contact with. But also something that we hear, like that I heard on a past chat that really helped me understand, because networking can feel really awkward sometimes, right? Is not to look at it as like a transaction of like, hey, like you need to like go in and just ask for the thing you want, but to really try and create a relationship with this person. So, hey, I've, done my, like, if you do your research, you can reference, why you're reaching out to this person. You really impressed me with your career arc or something like that. And then just say like, I'm really interested and would love to, talk a little bit about how you got where you are and how I should navigate it or something like that. If you're creating that relationship, it feels much less, at least for me, it feels very awkward to like ask for something from someone I don't really know that well. So yeah, definitely check that out. Okay, so this person had wanted to know, do you have any advice for someone who's applying to more niche roles? I feel it's the correct path in order to have a more specialized profile, but how can I muster the courage to take that risk?
Yeah, so I can take that one. I think I'd like to kind of drill in on mustering courage to take risk, because it sounds like this individual already knows what they need to do, right? So it's just a matter of how do you drum up the courage to start making those moves. I mean, if you think about risk, every time you leave your house, we're taking a risk these days. But like the career shift is a big one. And so I guess what I would just say is probably like the scary, I think what I would think is the scary part of that is like, it could potentially feel far away, whatever that long-term goal is. So like when you close your eyes and visualize what like the long-term goal looks like what are some short-term wins that you could try to achieve to get to that point? And so there's definitely been some moments in my life where I had to take some pretty big risks. And I think that building out like almost even muscle memory for trying to build confidence so that when you are in those situations, like you feel good and you feel empowered to handle them, even if it's like as simple as saying hello to somebody that you don't know or going to one of these networking events. For me, I jumped out of an airplane, which is a story for maybe another day.
I feel like, but one piece of advice, I mean, as well-meaning as you are, I am not going to be taking that one. I'm sorry. I love this idea that you're sort of like inuring yourself to that butterflies in the stomach feeling of like, oh God, is this the right choice or not? I love that idea.
It becomes less scary. So just to expand on the skydiving piece, I am a licensed skydiver. I have my own gear. I've jumped out of an airplane almost 100 times. I'm more or less retired at this point. But nonetheless, the first time I did that, I was freaking out. The first time I stood on the edge of the plane looking down, I was terrified. And then, by jump 5, 10, 15, 20, I was leaping out of that thing with my friends, and I was absolutely like ecstatic to be there. And so the same applies to careers and to dealing with people in uncertain circumstances. Like, yes, Sally, do it. you just build that muscle memory. And so going back to what you were saying about like the networking piece being uncomfortable, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. So I don't know, I guess I'll just leave you with that. Take some jumps, take some leaps every now and then. The risk won't feel as daunting.
No, I absolutely love that. If you get kind of used to that stepping out of your comfort zone, then yeah, even if something changes midway through, at least you're not also fighting your way through that, like, choke or terror kind of feeling. It gives you a little bit less concern and less to juggle in that moment. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we only have 15 minutes left in today's session. I'm going to try to get to the rest of these questions, but if you still have something you'd like to know, please feel free to ask. You can either ask it in the general chat, you can throw it in the Q&A bucket. I'll be looking at both of those. And that way we can make sure that y'all get questions answered. Okay, so this person had asked, how can I identify my career path, especially in the current, current economic climate that seems to be a lot of, a dearth of a lack of really like community. Why can't I English today, guys? I'm so sorry. A lack of work opportunities.
I mean, I guess I can take this one. I think the reality is it is a challenging time with the current economic conditions and the pandemic, and it's unemployment is high, so it is challenging. But I would also say it's opened up opportunities that previously would not have potentially been available, because from what I've been seeing is companies are no longer as concerned about where you are physically located. So roles in the past that would have required you to either relocate, or they weren't willing to relocate somebody and were only looking in a finite geographical area, are now sourcing candidates from all over the US, and in some cases outside as well. So I would say it's again, trying to leverage your network, having a list of target companies and industries that you're focusing on, be really clear, and develop a really clear story around the value that you bring to the table. And then I don't want to say unfortunately, but unfortunately it's a numbers game. So don't take it personally, and try to avoid riding the highs and the lows, because it can be a roller coaster ride, and just keep at it every day. And remember, it's the number of at bats, and sooner or later you're gonna get a hit. And so try to just focus on the activities and the tasks, and not and less on the outcome on a day-to-day basis of those activities and tasks. So and then network. You never know where that opportunity is going to come from. It can really come from anywhere.
I think it's also important to note, to your last point, that that networking opportunity or that connection can really come from anywhere. But also, while you're building that network, it's entirely possible that you'll be that person for someone else, that you'll help make a connection that they might need.
Absolutely.
In my experience, it feels just as good to help someone else as it does to get the help that you need. And sometimes that's what, for me at least, keeps me going when I'm still kind of foundering or not really feeling like I've hit my stride in a certain area.
Yeah, it's pay it forward.
Yeah, for sure. And granted, like a lot of what you said is really familiar to me, because like I graduated college in 2008. So I graduated into one of the worst job markets ever. And it's definitely shaped my career path in a lot of ways. Like granted, I had a pretty short-sighted and rather niche degree that I was working on, or working off of, but like I also, it created in me a lot of flexibility. I learned to leverage the fact that, I don't know how to do that, but I can be trained, and I got myself up to speed in this, ridiculous area. I've done everything from purchasing for a manufacturing company to audiobook publishing. Like I was a nanny for several years. I was a bartender and server and all this stuff. Like it's a lot. There's a pretty ridiculous list. But you know, if you're building that resiliency and learning how to pivot and learning how to kind of take things on the fly, that's definitely going to help you when it comes to networking as well. So I love that example, Pam. Thank you so much. All right, so this person had asked, how do we identify our passions when we feel so out of touch with ourselves? Do you have any strategies for getting unstuck?
Yeah, this is one where there's, I guess the first thing I would suggest is when you're feeling really stuck and you're struggling to figure out, you know, where your strengths are, what are you passionate about? I'd say, first of all, try and pay attention to what excites you. You know, where do you get your energy from? What do you enjoy doing? Where do you spend your time? Because typically where you spend your time is what you enjoy doing and what you're passionate about. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing is ask trusted colleagues or friends, how would they describe you? Where do they see your strengths and where do they think you really fit? Because for me, I know I've learned a lot from my friends and colleagues and how they have perceived the value that I add. I mean, and I'll be honest, there were some surprises. I was like, really? You think that? So I would say, you know, talk to them. And then there's some other, I mean, there's probably a ton of tools that if you search on the web for. A couple that I'm familiar with is there's a tool called Strength Finder. It's an online assessment, and it'll help kind of point you in the direction of, based on this assessment, what your strengths are. And then there's a book by Jenny Blake, who was formerly at Google, called Pivot, that talks about if you're looking at making a move and or change careers, or you're trying to figure out what, you know, where your interests lie. That's a good book, and there's a number of exercises and tools in the book to help you uncover, you know, where your interests are. So those are just some, you know, some of the ideas, and I'm sure there are many more that you can find on Google.
Yeah, for sure. Joan is actually sharing in the chat. 16 is another one. And just to kind of connect with Pam with what you said about, you know, looking where your interests lie, what do you spend your downtime doing? Personally, for me, like, it's been really helpful not only to look at like what things I'm doing currently, but look backwards, look in the past and find out, like, you know, what things did you used to enjoy? I mean, I've even gone so far as like when I was a kid and I really liked being around animals. So like, you know, maybe a volunteering opportunity is great. Knowing that I do like to volunteer with different organizations, then maybe more of a service structured company is something that I should look to find. There's a lot of really great information, especially if you look at your background and instead of just taking it at the surface level, like for me, it helps to really break down into like steps. Like you had said, you know, talking about like when you're trying to get where you want to go, don't look at it as A and B, look at it as step A and A2, then go to B, you know, breaking it down into those more manageable steps. For me, it comes into like really sitting down and realizing like, okay, I used to love running half marathons. What did I like about that? Well, I like the training of it. And so, you know, how could you get into into an area where you're helping like train another group of people to do something? So yeah, definitely like kind of dial that down or dial that out and see where it takes you. Okay, so before we jump for today, because we only have about 6 minutes left. So we did have some really great stuff. I'm going to share my screen here so y'all can see what I'm looking at. There we go. So what I wanted to share with y'all was this slide that we had, this information that we had Pam and Ashley talk to us about before we had today's session. So when it comes, these are obviously like, you know, tips about Clyde, but how would you describe the company culture in one word? and y'all had answered with thoughtful. Is there anything else that you'd like to, kind of tell us about that, or information on like how Clyde really, how the company really demonstrates this culture term?
So yeah, I see that value resonate throughout like everything that we do at Clyde when it comes to how we approach the product, how we approach our sales approach, and how we speak with our prospects and our customers, especially even with partners. Speaking from my own personal experience, just thinking about like what are the goals and the challenges of the person on the other side, and figuring out how we can make that easier for them. And that could be from colleague to colleague. It could be from us to an external party. But I think overall, like, again, going back to that people first approach that really got me hooked when I was first interviewing with Clyde, that thoughtfulness really is in every aspect of the business. And it makes it really such a treat to be here. Pam, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think, like you said, I mean, it really permeates throughout the organization in so many different ways, and it is, taking that moment to pausing for a minute to think before, we're off and running, and how what you're thinking of doing or about to do can impact others, whether within the organization or externally.
Awesome. Each of you, it looks like y'all agreed together that your favorite part about working at Clyde is the people. And we talked a little bit about that, how you each try and kind of consider the other person and remember that you're all on the same team. And surprised you about the company since joining?
I can say on a silly note, the volume of Slack messages. And I should say on a silly note, I mean, honestly, the volume of communication has been quite astounding. I mean, we are a very communicative bunch. Sometimes too communicative, I would say, because it's a lot of messaging.
But in some ways, I do very much appreciate that, because we are a remote org, as so many are. So I think there's a good level of transparency within the business around like, what is our company strategy? What are different teams working on? And while there are times where communication can be quite almost overloading, I think that I appreciate the opportunity to know what everyone is working on and to be able to contribute as a member of the team as well. So there's two sides to that.
No, I completely agree, Ashley. I would rather be in an organization that runs the risk of over communicating, if there is such a thing, than the opposite of that.
Absolutely second that. Having come from companies, God, I'm stumbling over my words today. Having come from companies where that was not, like, communication was not a thing, to Power to Fly, where we've always been remote distributed, it's a very welcome change of pace. Okay, so before we round out today, I just want to talk a little bit about, there's a bunch of open jobs at Clyde. I'm going to share the link again to where you can check out their company page. You're also, obviously, we don't have every open job that Clyde might have, so you're also welcome to check out Clyde's own website. So as I go and share that link again with the group, can either of you talk about, maybe any tips that you would have on somebody who's applying to one of these roles at Clyde?
Pam, I loved your note about being authentic, just being your true authentic self. I think going back to a lot of the questions that were asked of us or asked today, like building that story around like your past experiences and how you can bring a fresh perspective to that role is something that, like, especially from speaking on my own behalf, like I would love to hear that And bringing and building a team that has like diverse perspectives and backgrounds, I think is really important to the Clyde team. So we'd love to hear your story. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is not very many people actually fill out cover letters. So it is a really great opportunity for you to share that story and to share your take on how you would bring that value to that value to that role. So share your stories. We want to hear them.
Really good point. I love what you said about the cover letter, because I feel like, especially in our resume building chats, we talk a lot about a couple questions, that maybe the bigger questions that like a recruiter or somebody might have looking at your resume. Well, why the two roles, or what about the industry you're coming from you think makes you a fit for Clyde? But you can also think of it, it's not something and your resume cover letter is a little bit like the trailer, but you still want to leave enough information, or you want to give them enough information that recruiter really wants to know more about you. They really want to know why you'd be a good fit for this role. So yeah, that's awesome. I love that idea. Thank you so much. So we are out of time for today. I do want to as well as so thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Also want to send a huge thank you out to everybody, all of our amazing community members that joined us today. The questions that y'all pre-submitted for today's session were amazing. It was really hard to pick between all of them, or pick amongst them. And I loved how active the comment section was today on today's chat. So thank you all so much for really participating and really bringing this event to life. Again, if you want to make sure you go follow the link that I shared, where you can check out Clyde, check out their open roles. You can follow them, as well as I hope that many more of you will join us on upcoming sessions. We've got our April mini summit happening the 6th through the 9th. It's the theme for this one is elevating Black women, as well as many more virtual events that we have all starting next week. So definitely check those out, and I hope to see many more of you in the future. As for us, we're done for today, but have a lovely Friday and a safe and fun weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.